Good day and welcome to this special conversation. And today we reflect on a matter that has captured public attention and stirred many emotions. The reported death of Ambassador Nathi Mthethwa in Paris. May his soul rest in peace. Just a disclaimer, we are not investigators, nor are we here to make declarations. Instead, we come as ordinary citizens to follow the news closely, who weigh in on matters of public interest and who believe that asking questions is part of strengthening public interest. Joining me is a friend of mine, Thando Miti, a South African who pays attention to current affairs and offers thoughtful analysis from the perspective of an engaged citizen. Together, we will reflect on some of the questions people are asking. What you will hear are our personal opinions and observations, not official findings, but they are important questions to consider as society processes this news. Well, I just want to zoom in, but before that, Tip, and thank you very much for allowing me to hijack you. We were just conversing about this, and then I thought it should not end between the two of us. We should just share it with the broader public so that people can weigh in and share their views on the matter. So as we kick it off, from your perspective as someone following the reports, do you notice any inconsistencies in the official story about what happened at the Regency Hotel in Paris?
Thank you for having me, Mhlabam. And I think maybe let me start with my own disclaimer. To the extent that this is a speculative conversation,
yes,
in the context of free speech.
Sure.
Maybe it's important to also note that
disclaimer is important.
We need to respect the fact that somebody has died.
Sure.
And it's a very personal and a very private matter. So this is really out of just respect to a family who obviously have lost a beloved one, and a country who's lost an ambassador.
Yeah.
But the reality is that this is news. You know? I mean, we went to bed last night with a very stark news headline about the death of the ambassador of South Africa to France. We woke up to a flurry of conspiracies about whether or not, in fact, he's dead. And I think part of that is because, you know, as a country, we've been through this before, in a sense that where there's someone of a certain profile who was implicated in some wrongdoing, and then before they could even face the full might of the law or speak for themselves or account for whatever has happened, then they were dead. I mean, Gavin Watson, to be quite specific. In fact, there's already some parallels being drawn between that specific case and this one. But you see, the thing with, you know, whether they're mysteries or controversies or conspiracies, they exist in the space between what is known and what is not known. Yeah. And in this case, there's a lot of things that are known, also a lot of things that are not known. And therefore, it's very fertile ground for various kinds of controversies as well as conspiracies. I mean, I'll just take you through, you know, my own investigation in terms of what is known. Right? What is known is that the ambassador is dead. He was found outside the Hyatt Hotel in Paris. Now, he had booked a room on the 22nd floor of the hotel. All this information is known, and it's been reported by multiple sources, both within the country and even outside. I mean, this is made global news, because you can imagine the profile of the individual who's died and being on a diplomatic mission in a foreign country. So there's obviously a lot of questions and a lot of issues that are going to come up in terms of how this matter is handled by both countries, apart from the fact that the family itself will have its own processes. But between the two countries, a lot of questions are going to be asked. How does the protocol work if a dignitary dies in a foreign country, and all of that. Now, one of the things that is known is that there's an issue around the mechanism of the window, that the safety was effectively forced open. There's also an issue about the wife who received a message from him, which alluded to him apologizing, expressing a regret for intending to end his life. What's also been reported is the fact that the investigators, they say they found no immediate signs of any forced struggle or traces of narcotics or even illegal drugs. What is also known is that the French prosecutor, now it's been reported by AP News, is that he has described the case as possibly a suicide, but the investigation is ongoing. Now, this is what is known, and it's been reported by multiple sources. But let's look at what is not known, Because I think that's where the crux of the matter really is,
Yes,
in terms of how then do we reconcile the two and find the space in between and understand where these are coming from. What is not known, one of the things at least, is that there is no confirmed proof, so far at least, that someone else was involved, right? And why this is very important is because in a case like this, I think it becomes the first question.
Yeah.
Was he murdered? Was he killed? What exactly is the story around his death? But it is portrayed and framed and reported as a suicide, to the extent that even the French authorities are putting it out there as suicide. So that is effectively the narrative that is being driven. And I would imagine it's the interest of the French authorities to frame it as a suicide. Because if effectively there was foul play, then it creates a very complex situation. Now, what is also not known is the precise timing of events and the exact physical evidence, forensic evidence, for instance, like CCTV, full toxicology, the window mechanism in more detail and all of that. Those things are still under investigation.
And the autopsy report.
Of course.
Yeah.
Now, the question really is now, where do the conspiracies find their footing? And what fuels them? To the extent that there's even talks of a possible cover-up, should in fact this be viewed as something that is not suicidal in nature, that could very well be said that there's a certain cover-up. Now, the reality is that we're talking about, two sovereign countries and with certain diplomatic ties and certain relations. And if you're suggesting that there could very well have been a cover-up, you are now saying, can the French authorities be part of a cover-up like this?
What is it in for them, if that is the case?
In fact, so there's two questions. One is that, can they do it? Can they be part of a cover-up, right? Answer is very simple. Yes, they can.
Okay.
Yes. Because apart from the fact that, the French aren't new to controversies of this nature given the history, and how they've dealt with matters of this nature. It's not the first time that someone who's of a higher profile has died within the French soil.
Can we draw back and about this particular high-profile person?
Well, I mean, we can talk about.
Just triggered my intro.
Yeah, look. I mean, we can talk about Prince Diana, for instance, right? High-profile individual who died in France. Right, and the controversies around that. And there was always questions about how the French authorities handled the matter. Obviously, the idea was that they don't want to be found wanting, or in a sense found that their processes or systems did not follow what was required in terms of making sure that this thing is dealt with and reported correctly. Right. So these types of things do attract controversies by their very nature, and they attract mysteries by their very nature. Now, again, about where these conspiracies and possible speculation about the cover-up, where they arise, is that the unnatural details, all right, and, well, in particular, the secured window, which was forced open, the message to the wife, no drugs, no sign of struggle, which some interpret as odd or inconsistent, giving room to doubt the suicide narrative. So in the reporting, there's certain inconsistencies that you pick up but this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. And looking at history as well, both globally and in South Africa, of suspicious deaths that have been tied to political scandals makes people more likely to assume foul play, right? So effectively, we've been handed over the narrative, and as the public, we're saying, okay, hold up. What exactly do we know? What don't we know? What is the space in between? And there's a flurry of controversies and mysteries that are fueling these conspiracies.
Yes, I want to believe that what feeds the curiosity of South Africans is that we did not see the emergency vehicles where they were actually collecting the body, and as you have said, and what the news is saying, that even the suicide note, no one knows about it. Where it was not returned to us, it was returned to the wife. But those are the things that are leaving gaps, and they make people to speculate. Because the question now that is doing the rounds is that is the ambassador really, really late?
Of course. In fact, you're touching a very important point here because, I mean, think about it. We haven't seen the crime scene. I don't know, maybe if somebody has seen the crime scene being reported where you've got police, ambulances, and, the do not cross, kind of markers with beacons and everything else, because it would be a crime scene, right? But I haven't
not
seen
over a day or two.
No, it will probably be reported continuously with visuals of the crime scene. Right? We don't necessarily have to see the gruesome details, but as a crime scene, because this is a matter of global significance, I would imagine, to some extent. Right? But we haven't seen the crime scene. We've not seen the police doing their work. Like you would in a typical incident. Let's say there was a shooting, like we've had in the US, where someone walks into a school, shoots children and teachers. For days when the reporting is continuing.
It's a developing
There's
story.
a reference to the crime scene. You always see the crime scene. We haven't seen that here, right? I mean, there may be reasons why we haven't seen it, but that fact that we haven't seen it is part of the reasons why there's been this fueling of these controversies.
So, in that case, Thando, you wouldn't say us as citizens, sometimes we jump into conclusion too quickly in sensitive cases like this, especially if there are such gaps that we've just alluded to.
Well, I mean, it's in the nature of human beings to jump into conclusions. It's very common, and also remember, these things are unsubstantiated. And no one is stating these things as facts, right? So jumping into conclusion is very common. It happens all the time, and as I said earlier on, is fueled by the inconsistencies and the stuff that is in between that doesn't really make sense, right? And I mean, think about it. So the instigation of this thing is the fact that Mr. Mayiso, rest his peace, Mthethwa is implicated, right, in the Madlanga Commission, because it's mentioned that he forced the Inspector Khadebe at the time to withdraw charges against Mr. Mdluli, right? The question is, what does that say? What does it mean, right? For him and who else is implicated just from that statement? Right? Could there have been people who wanted to silence him? Or was it about him fearing dealing with the music and facing the music to the extent that he would? And I mean, also think about it. The question that I was asked last night when we were having this conversation is, if he had been in the country during this Madlanga Commission and this thing was mentioned, right, what would have been a likely response? Would he have made the same choice, given the fact that we're saying that this is suicide? Would he have made the same choice or very different, right? Think about it. You're a sitting ambassador, current sitting ambassador in a foreign country. There's a criminal implication against you, right? I would think that with or without an investigation or substantiation of whatever the claims are, right, the state would have had to take some action. Right? Either recall him, bring him home to face the music. The reality is that his life would be very different, would be very changed. We're a very brutal society as South Africans. And I think if this is in fact suicide, then I think he was fearful of facing the music. And his life would not have been the same. In fact, he would probably have lost pretty much everything. His name, his credibility, his career, and everything else, right? I would imagine that can drive a man to take very drastic measures, right? And he's living in Paris. He's got security detail. I mean, his life is very cushy there. He's among the Europeans. I mean, in fact, it is even reported that one of his last acts of duty was laying a wreath in some of the memorials. One of the memorial area within France, where he had laid a wreath, right? So that's all part and parcel of the work that he's doing. Right? The reality, though, is that he would have to come back home and face the music at some point. Right? Whether that's something that he was willing to do or not, or the people who are looking for him, who wanted to silence him, we don't know. And because we don't know those things, we are very likely to jump into conclusions, to speculate, to fuel all of these conspiracies and so on.
And people that are at the forefront in as far as speculation is concerned are ordinary people, just like me and you.
Case in
but
point.
Now, I just want to now look at the media. Do you think the media has a responsibility to either amplify or shut down such speculations?
I think the media's responsibility is to report responsibly.
Good.
Right?
Yes.
That's the first thing, right? But you must also remember, as the public, our views and opinions are often shaped by what the media reports.
They set the agenda.
Exactly. So this is what is happening here, is that we have opinions, we've got views, we've got all these kinds of ideas about what may have happened, what didn't happen, but it is shaped by what is being reported, right? But also shaped by what is not being reported, right? So, and whether or not the issues like this being fueled happens or doesn't happen, it may not necessarily be the intention of the reporting, but it is a byproduct of the reporting. Because you report, then there's a certain narrative, people pick up the narrative, others disagree with it. That by itself fuels the whole conversation around a matter of this nature, especially given the fact that it's a very sensitive issue. So I don't think the media has got a duty or responsibility to shut down or to even elevate. Those things are natural bioprocesses of the work that the media is doing in reporting whatever that is happening.
Yeah, and of course it depends on their editorial, because it's not only one media house that has a monopoly over that particular.
And also they may want to have different angles.
Yes,
because remember, if I'm reporting for a certain media house, I already know what media house X has reported.
Yes.
I want a fresh angle.
Certainly.
I want something that is very different, that is more interesting than what has already been reported. And then it becomes a race to the bottom, if it were. Because everyone is trying to outshine the other with facts and figures and numbers and the story, the angle, and all of that. Right.
Yeah.
But again, we've got to peg it on responsible reporting, because end of the day, somebody has died.
That is a bottom line. And as an ambassador abroad, one would assume, Thando, certain levels of protection and protocol are in place. And do you think, personally, this raises questions around the kind of security our diplomats receive in foreign postings?
I mean, think about the work of an ambassador. You know, France has a responsibility also to protect our ambassador in their own country. You know, we obviously put them there with the necessary infrastructure. We do whatever we do to make sure that they're able to fulfill the duties safely. But also the French authorities have got a responsibility to make sure that there's no harm that befalls, you know, a foreign national, especially a diplomat at this level. I mean, the ambassador doesn't usually drive himself. He's usually with an entourage of protectors, aides, you know, and all kinds of people around him, right? And it would have been very peculiar for him to do this as part of an ordinary day where he just checks himself at a hotel. So where were the security detail? Where were his aides? You know, again, these are things that we don't know. Because typically, in fact, the report was that he's gone missing. All right, one of the first reports. But
as if he's an ordinary person.
Who was missing? It's almost like saying a minister has gone missing in a country. I mean, that raises flags, because you know you always have people around you. So how did he then extract himself from that whole setup and infrastructure and was able to book himself at a hotel, and then everything else that's been reported then happened? So already that raises those questions, because you would imagine that, you know, this is not an ordinary person. You know, in fact, he lives far better than the majority of the French citizens himself. And there's always spotlight on him, on his movements, you know, and his work and everything else. So that again, that question, but where was everybody else? He would have had to have a valid reason to say to his security detail, again, you know, stay back. I've got this. I'll do this on my own. I'll do the book. He booked himself. He booked. Well, at least the reporter saying he booked himself. Odd, don't you think?
Yeah, it's supposed to be the office that does the booking.
But you know, maybe it's one of those that fell through the cracks.
We can confirm that Upukishen 10 to 5, and he was given a key to his room, or he was taken by a porter, because remember, I suppose that's a 5-star hotel. He was even ushered to his room, because he's no ordinary citizen.
I remember then walks upstairs and then you know, books into a room and then.
Well, Thando, if foul play were suspected, as we conclude, what do you think the French state's responsibility would be towards South Africa?
Look, it's in the fact that even on the very early report on this thing, the French prosecutors framed it as suicide, because that's the best version for them, for this thing to be seen as suicide. It's not in French's interest that this thing is viewed as anything else other than suicide. A man took his robbery, murder, whatever it is. A man took his own life, open and shut. And that's the narrative the French authorities are going to push at all cost. Because any other reporting, any other narrative about how the man died is going to damage France as a country in terms of how does a foreign diplomat die on French soil? What were the circumstances around that? If it's so sad, it's easy to explain, right? So that for me is one of the things that are going to be very key in the investigations going forward.
Yeah.
France is going to do whatever they can to make sure the narrative doesn't move away from the fact that they, with their own authorities, have done the investigation, they've been to the crime scene, they've drawn a conclusion that this thing is a suicide. They would love it to end there. But we know it's not going to end there because already in his home country, Mr. Mthethwa, we woke up to a flurry of all kinds of speculations about a cover-up, about all of this. In fact, someone said last night when we had a conversation, says, but guys, do you think Nkabi is Africa and France? You know? Because that is the speculation, you know, that Nkabi got to him. But again, the French are only interested in one version, suicide. And they'll shut down any other version that this is not suicide because it's cleaner for them. It's cleaner for them.
It's really it's tricky because this morning I was listening to they say is it a caretaker or what who was focusing mainly on the window, saying it's impossible that someone can push that window open because it opens just a bit. You can't even put a hand. That's what that guy was saying, and he was speaking in French. And someone was interpreting, and of course, there were captions. So, to me, it was more like they are ruling out suicide.
That's part of the contradictory evidence that's going to start coming up in the investigations. I mean, look, if you think about it, I mean, most hotels now have got these standards about windows not, or especially in the upper floors, to avoid exactly incidents like this. Right? And I mean, if a window that is designed to keep someone safe can so easily be pushed, then what's the point of having mechanisms that block the window from being open? In fact, one of the reports I read said with the Caesar that this thing was cut and open with the Caesar. What kind of mechanism are we talking about? You know? So already that for me already points to one of the issues that are going to be very critical in understanding exactly if there was foul play or not, or this is just all bogus to whatever extent that it might be. You know?
Well, Thando, how much transparency should South Africans reasonably expect from both the French and South African governments in handling this matter?
I'll be honest with you. There's not going to be any transparency here. A lot is at stake, right? A lot is at stake in the Milan Commission, as it is. A lot is at stake for the individuals who are implicated. A lot is at stake for France itself, given the fact that this has happened in their soul. We shouldn't be expecting a lot of transparency. Yes, we expect it, we want it, we demand it, but I doubt we'll get it. And I think if you ask me to speculate how the matter is going to be closed, is that South Africans, unfortunately, have got a very short memory. You know, in a month's time, if the board is brought back and then there was a funeral, maybe even private funeral, right? It'll just remain in our heads as something that happened, but it's not going to go beyond this. I honestly doubt if it's ever going to go beyond what it is now, except that there's going to be closure for the family, end of story.
Yeah, I think you have answered me because my follow-up question was, if transparency is not forthcoming, what do you think the public response should be?
We've got a short memory. We'll move on to other news. That's the reality.
How will then this affect the bilaterals relations? And I just want to zoom in into the political context now between the two countries. Because I don't know whether there are commercial ties between SA and France or political ties. But in the end, how do you think this incident might affect relations between South Africa and France, especially since Ambassador Mthethwa represented the country at such high level?
To be quite honest, I think it shouldn't have any bearing on the bilateral trade relations that we might have with France at all, right? Especially if it's framed as a suicide, if you think about it. I said earlier on that it's in France's interest that is viewed as suicide. It's also in our interest as a country that is viewed as suicide. Because if there's foul play, then the question is, what role does South Africa have in an act of this nature, foul play in a foreign country? Then it brings up, in fact, a lot of questions that must be answered, which might be very tricky and very hard to answer. So I'm saying that, you know, country to country, it's also in our interest that this thing is shut down as a suicide. Then if France and South Africa can just shake on it as suicide and close the matter. But if it's not framed as suicide, the conspiracies flourish and there's more investigations, which nobody can stop anyway. I mean,
Yeah.
look at you and I now sitting here speculating on this matter, right? With the tools that we have. Others have got bigger tools, bigger infrastructure. It's in their interest that they even dig deeper into this thing. So it's also in the country's interest, that is South Africa, that this thing is viewed as suicide. Because if it's suicide, then it's open and shut. End of story, right? Because if there's foul play, or if there's a growing concern with the evidence showing that there's possible foul play, then the question is, how much do we know as a country? How much does our state know? And what kind of levels of responsibility do they now have in responding to that? Because it means therefore no one is safe. I mean, it's happened before that a foreign national or diplomat gets killed in a foreign country. And the diplomatic row that really comes out of that becomes quite massive and elaborate and very complex. But the reality is that as the African government, I would imagine that if the man committed suicide, it's easier for us also, cleaner again and neater for us to shut it down as such.
Wow. Well, let's leave it there, Tipa. It's very interesting. As I said, this is a developing story.
Yeah.
I'm eager to see the developments in France as to what's the status quo now. And of course, conversations continue, especially on the social media space in South Africa. And we can only rely on authentic facts that come up to close the gaps that we're talking about. I'm sure next time we'll talk about Mr. Malema.
Yeah, that's another one. That's another one. And it was happening right here in East London. I mean, I can tell you now is that this one is going to be a big one, right? Well, I mean, I just heard on my way here that I think the judge has set a date in January for pre-sentencing trial, right? And I imagine he's going, I don't know if he's appealed it already. I've not been following the story today. But he's got no choice but to appeal this, because he's now, this is about his life, his personal life.
Yeah.
It's not about politics. It's not about the FF. It's about his personal life.
Yeah.
And to be quite honest with you, if you either have to choose between fighting for a political party you started and fighting for your life, you are going to focus on fighting for your life. And this is about him, right? Sad outcome, but the reality is that the judge made it very clear. I mean, the judge took 2 days, just to talk about the evidence that was presented during the trial, which she found very compelling to the extent that the ruling is what it is, that the man has been found guilty, right? So I can't imagine being him right now. But the reality is that he's a fighter, we know. He's probably going to come out blazing out of this and maybe even insinuate that this is political. You know politicians.
Yes, but what do you think will happen between now and January? Because if he's found guilty, I'm sure some processes should kick off in Parliament where he's serving. Would they still, because the sentence is still withheld, would he still continue to be an honourable member of South African Parliament?
Yeah, so I'm not
pending.
Of course. Look, I'm not really clear how the rules work in terms of having a criminal charge and whether or not he can serve in Parliament. I mean, we know that the whole Zuma thing was an issue as well. We've got Gideon McKenzie, he had a criminal record, who served his time in prison, but he's now a parliamentarian as well. So I think the rules there will kick in, and what needs to be done will be done. But here's the thing: there's two things. He's being found guilty, right? So, but he's not been sentenced yet, right? So there's also the issue of whether or not he will serve jail time.
Okay.
Now, if you look at this charge, it attracts up to 15 years in prison. Right. So whether or not he's going to serve jail time or it's going to be a suspended sentence, we don't know. We'll only know in January. But your question is, what happens between now and then? What has happened is that he's now criminally found guilty.
Okay. We will massage that further. We're chasing this particular rabbit now. Thank you very much for watching. And of course, we welcome your comments. Thank you very much again, Tipa.
Thank you, sir.